Second time lucky.
You didn't have to tell anyone that.
Oh, I do, because I'm going to compliment you in that folks out there, welcome to Momentous Live episode 21. Gray figured out in less than 2 minutes what it took yours truly 20 minutes to figure out a couple of weeks ago when Gray wasn't here and we had Jamie, Barb Murphy, and of course, Will Silver. And we went live 20 minutes in.
A spirited discussion for you and you alone.
Exactly.
It was the four of us. It was all right.
Jamie decided to come back, believe it or not.
I'm a glutton for punishment. You know me.
As you do.
On today's episode, we're going to be talking about Tesla boats, Facebook in the Matrix, robot basketball, a dorky playdate, and much, much more. We got a real grab bag, including all sorts of interesting entertainment news. I'm Tristan Jutra, and to my left is...
I'm Gray Williams.
And below him is...
William Silver.
And our special guest for the fourth time, I believe, the incomparable...
Jane Reynolds.
5 and you get a free coffee.
Yeah. Oh, good. Better be good coffee, though.
No.
That's Tim Hortons garbage. No more sponsorship from Tim Hortons.
Momentous
We have
coffee.
no budget. We have no budget.
Right.
Great. You've got contacts. Momentous Coffee. Make it happen.
Done. I'm on it.
Get our merch store going. So before we jump into our main stories today, just want to touch very quickly on one story that broke about a week ago, and there's still been a few ripple effects from that. And that had to do with the news about the Pegasus spyware, which came from NSO Group, an Israeli phone surveillance software company. And activists and researchers found the company's software targeting the smartphones of activists, journalists, and executives, including 10 prime ministers, 3 presidents, and a king. So 37 phones in total they found so far, but there is the potential that this spyware may have made it onto other phones out there. So this was a 0-day exploit, and it may have been out there in the wild for a while. Apple released an update reasonably quickly on that, but that didn't seem to do the trick. I believe it was 14.7, and now 14.7.1 is just out in the last few days. Gray, could you give us the quick rundown on this, and should regular folks be concerned about it?
Regular folks probably not. Essentially, the idea here is that you would receive an iMessage from someone, and with zero input from the user, simply by reading the message, it would give them root access to the phone. And so they would go ahead, they would install the spyware in the back end, and it was providing a great deal of information, everything from telemetry to photos on the device. It's nasty. This one's a really nasty one. It's fascinating because phone security seems to be almost a specialty in Israel. We saw that with... it was almost like a Rowhammer attack where they were freezing memory and then using that to copy the memory off. We've seen Apple fight this in a number of different ways. The Trusted Platform module and the Secure Enclave has been really great in preventing things like this from happening. And of course, it's just a game of what went up in the chip all the time. It's fascinating because, with something like Apple's A-series processors, it becomes more and more difficult to do this because you're not working with the reference designs any longer. Apple's got a bit of their secret sauce here. But this one, NSO came out and said that they've given up $300 million in sales because of potential human rights violations, and clearly not enough. There are some thoughts that this was actually installed on one of the partners of Jamal Khashoggi. People have died because of this, and yet this company is allowed to continue to do business. It's pretty scary stuff, and the reason it is because governments take advantage of it as much as they're being victimized by it. So I think you have this fascinating bit of spycraft here, where companies are looking at this, or countries are looking at this, going, "Well, it's going to get used against us, so we might as well use it as well." It's the same sort of theory of nuclear arsenal, with kind of devastating results. It's terrifying stuff.
Yeah, well, they claim that their products are meant for government agencies and intelligence. The question is, how much do they vet the said clients, and could these tools get into other hands? Of course, we've seen through in past years people using exploits through apps such as WhatsApp. we saw what's his face, MBS, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, apparently had sent an image, or no, it was a video file to Jeff Bezos via WhatsApp, and compromised Jeff Bezos' phone that way. And that's all sorts of hilarity ensued from that as well. And that's the challenge with things like this, is that whether it's Apple or Google or Microsoft, the owners of these operating systems, they have to be on guard from attacks from all different places, like simultaneously. And it's like you said, you're like squashing bugs and gaps all over the place. And sometimes it's hard to keep up, especially when there's a 0-day exploit. Now, organizations like NSO, they discover these exploits and then they don't tell the companies. They profit from them instead. Now, Jamie, I know that you believe in the free market in general. How do you feel about a company who discovers, through their R&D or through intelligence elsewhere, like actually profiting off of this instead of telling the software vendor, be it an Apple or a Google or a Microsoft or what have you, where they could patch these things before it gets out in the wild? How do you feel about that ethically?
I guess I don't condone it, if that's what you're fishing for.
Oh, come on.
I guess I would look at that and I would say, just from an ethical standpoint, it doesn't sound like it's a good ethical way of running a company, and it would probably, in the long term, make that particular company less desirable to work with. And so it's probably not a good long-term strategy to simply abuse people's technology for profit, because eventually there's going to be enough people abused that your company's not going to have a really good reputation, I guess. I haven't really thought about it. It just seems wrong on multiple levels to simply take that knowledge and abuse it, like any knowledge. If you find any bit of knowledge useful to run an exploit, I guess I'm not a complete proponent of laissez-faire capitalism, where anything goes as long as the market dictates. I prefer a bit of controlled capitalism, and so in that case, no, something like that is not a good thing.
Should any of the governments intervene? It's tricky because the governments are their clients, but should they, sort of lean on, whether it's the Israeli government or others, sort of pressure companies like this to say, look, if you discover an exploit, it's incumbent on you to let the vendors know, because you're creating a great risk, not just for your own citizens, but for the world at large, especially when you have malevolent actors from other states, whether they're their rivals or their rogue states, could be taking advantages of stuff like this. Because all it takes is someone to pretend they're buying it on the behalf of so-called good government X, and maybe pass it along to others that have even more malevolent means. So should governments intervene here if at all possible?
The short answer is yes. Governments, I always look at governments as just, as they should, in my mind, be looked at as people just trying to organize everybody else, help organize society. So if you're trying to run a society, you want to do the best for the people in that society. So therefore, government should be responsible for doing things that are going to benefit their society. But on the other hand, if you can help damage a rival country by using the technology, does that benefit your people? Again, it just comes down to ethics. Ultimately, if we're all a bunch of nihilists and existentialists, yeah, go for it. But it just as it's all good. Just do whatever you want. Yeah, we'll all be dead soon, anyways. But I think, in this case, it seems nothing's ever clear cut for me. There's always areas where things sort of make sense. There's always going to be subterfuge. There's always going to be cyber warfare now, forever and forevermore. It's always going to exist. Profiting off of it, though, I don't think is probably where I would draw the line.
The interesting thing there that you said there is cyber warfare, because right now this is lopsided, right? Apple, Google, Facebook, all of these groups who are currently being targeted by other groups to essentially exploit their user base, they're playing within the lines for the most part. Now, they also control the access to the vast portions of the internet. Could you imagine in the boardrooms of Google and Facebook and Apple having a conversation about the members of NSO Group and what these groups probably know about them, and suddenly deciding that maybe they don't want to play fair anymore? having your life crushed by a massive corporate entity because you were participating in what could be argued as cyber terrorism. That's your sort of dystopian, we're just going to talk a little bit about Snow Crash in a bit, but that is the dystopian cyber future, which these guys playing too fast and too loose with the rules could find themselves on the wrong end of that firearm.
Now, Will, you are you're all generally concerned about security. We've had a few chats about possible breaches on one's devices, be it a laptop, an iPad, or a phone. Now, how concerned were you when you heard about this news? And were you just updating your phone now when I saw you looking down?
Maybe. I for some reason I have automatic updates turned on, so it might have updated anyways. But yeah, I might chat with you at another time about that. But anyways, but no, I mean, I think this is one of the concerns that we should all have. I tend to maybe skew a little bit paranoid, but I think it is a genuine concern because we all, in my opinion, make a passive agreement that we're going to open ourselves up to these things to a certain extent. We don't want it to happen, obviously, but there's always that possibility. It's just like if you get in a car, you might get in a car accident to a certain extent. So, I mean, it's certainly a bad thing, and it's good to just be aware and be careful and be vigilant. But at the same time, it's the sort of passive agreement that I think we make when we use these devices, when we log on to things. So it's just something you have to be careful and aware of.
And that's one good point that you mentioned there is having the automatic updates on. Now, depending on the device and the operating system, sometimes there's an option to download automatically, but wait for your permission to actually do the installation. So that way, when you decide to get around to it, it's already ready to go for you. But sometimes it's nice to have that control. But the more people that enable the automatic updates, the safer folks will be at large. The only trouble being sometimes these automatic updates can break software if the software developers haven't had a chance to do any required updates to their apps, depending on the nature of the OS update that's gone out. So as mentioned, iOS 14.7.1 was rolled out by Apple, and in their traditionally bland software notes, they said, an application may be able to execute arbitrary code with kernel privileges. Apple is aware of a report that this issue may have been actively exploited. So there you go. Sounds totally anodyne, right? You're not saying, oh, and people died. Just FYI.
If I ever see software notes that do say, and people died, we have entered a dystopian cyber future.
Update now. Speaking of nothing in particular. I thought I had a segue, but I don't. Dystopian futures. How about electric cars? After we've strip mined the earth for all the resources for batteries and so on. But on the bright side, Tesla's done something good that some people have been calling for a while. Elon Musk says Tesla's to open up their global charging network to other EVs later this year. So basically, for years and years, people have said that it's time. Tesla has done so much for their own vehicles and EVs in general by popularizing electric cars, by making them attractive and appealing. But their 25,000 chargers would only work with their own vehicles. So if you bought, say, a Mercedes-Benz or any other brand, even it could be a Lucid or a Rivian when they come out, or a new Ford F-150 Lightning pickup truck, you would not be able to charge it at Tesla supercharger stations. And that's one of the big hits against other players in the EV space, is just the infrastructure isn't there. And it looks like that Elon, it's maybe surprising some. He's like, because in some ways it's like, well, why would I want to help you guys? You're my competition. But this kind of indicates that he's more about the bigger picture. What are your thoughts on this, Jamie?
It did not. I think Tesla or Elon, they gave away the patents to their electronic charging a few years ago. So they have no patents on any of that stuff. So anybody could actually build their own superchargers. And I'm assuming that's also with the new ones that have just come out. I was just reading an article recently, maybe just today, about in Hope, BC. They're just installing or just about to install a 250 megawatt charger or something, or a gig or watt charger or something like that. I'm not sure what it was, but I think they're simply trying to continue to generate interest with the public, and encourage electric vehicles, because that's all Tesla does. They just do electric. So the more electric exists and the more other stations exist in the marketplace that will also charge Teslas too, hopefully, then it makes their cars that much more available to the rest of the marketplace. So I think it's a business decision. I don't think it's the good of the world. Since most of the world's electricity still runs on fossil fuels, it's not like it's going to be a huge benefit that way. I think it's just to get more people buying more electrics, and Tesla's the electric car company.
Well, until such point as we can, gather our resources and build more hydroelectric dams and
so you want to kill all the fish? Okay,
reactors. We'll just use some of that sweet crypto. Now, to be fair, Tesla's not making the adapters. It's on the other car manufacturers to make the adapters, and most other cars use CCS or CHAdeMO, I believe it's pronounced. For that, there's like all these rival standards. The exception being in Europe, where Tesla was mandated to use a universal standard there. But Graham, do you think this is a indication of like a rising tide lifts all boats? Is that part of the business decision that Jamie's alluding to here?
I think so, yeah. I mean, it's a business decision, but I do think there is some altruism to it as well. I mean, you don't necessarily give away access to something that is unique to you unless it does benefit you. But I think there is a benefit to all of us here as well. Looking at this, I'm on my last gas vehicle. I didn't even want this one to be gas. I wanted to buy an electric here and just couldn't get the range that I wanted in the vehicle that I wanted. But that's changing within the next year or so. And looking at things like the F-150 Lightning and looking at the Model X and all of these different cars that kind of fit my needs. Before I was looking at this, the supercharger network is a huge benefit to that. Being able to use that with another vehicle, even if there are fees attached to it, I think does open up my choice as a consumer. So for me, this is actually a really great feature. And it also does make me think more highly of Tesla. It's Elon's not always the most stable guy and not always the nicest guy on the block, but he gets some brownie points from me on this one.
So just as a little side note, I heard yesterday that Toyota's actually been lobbying the U.S. government to slow down on some of their EV mandates, because Toyota went down the hybrid route. And to be fair, they were very early, but they chose hybrid electric vehicles as opposed to pure battery electric vehicles. Aside from a couple of experiments, there was a pure battery RAV4 a number of years ago, and hydrogen as well, with the hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. And the name is escaping me, but there are two hydrogen stations in the Vancouver area anyway. So that's a little bit limiting. But so we'll see how things play out there. I think Toyota is all of a sudden is going to find themselves in a big catch-up scenario. Now, Will, I know that you are a bit of a Beamer guy. Given that if whatever BMW's efforts are in this area, we've seen the i8 hybrid, and we've seen the i3s, and they've previewed all sorts of others, including the i4. Knowing that they might be able to tap into Tesla's vast supercharger network, does that inch you a little bit closer to maybe choosing electric next time around?
Well, I think, this is the other thing, just to feed off Jamie and Gray's points, that, going back to the movie Who Killed the Electric Car, or at least the first one of those movies, one of the things they pointed out was that one of the big problems with hydrogen is combating the system of gas stations, and how many gas stations there were, and how many hydrogen stations you were going to have to make just to make it feasible for someone to drive, even within a city or a state or a province, was going to need buy-in and cooperation and funding, and perhaps even governmental intervention in the same level that it took to build the highway system in the United States in the early 1900s. So this is one of the things where it helps everyone. It's probably, to Jamie's point, a larger business decision, but the more that they can feed and build a network, and I guess maybe even cooperate, perhaps, if that's not a dirty word, then it's kind of better for everyone. And to Grace's point, one of the problems is obviously getting the technology better and all that kind of stuff. But also, even if you don't have the range, which is, like Gray is one of my holdbacks, is if I want to go to, on a road trip, if we're ever able to go to the United States again, go to Portland or something like that, and have more than 2 or 3 stations on the way. I actually have a friend who I go to soccer games with, and he took his I-7 down once, and he had to plan the route all the way down where he could stop off on the way to Portland. So that was a bit of an experiment of, is this feasible? Can this happen? Do I have to stop in Seattle and just to hope for the best, or are there other places I can stop on the way? And I guess I have to stop off at a bunch of universities because they seem to have charging stations. Let me just pull off at Eugene.
It's municipal halls as well.
Yeah, because back at the beginning of the mechanization of the automobile, filling stations were things that you had to plan your trips to. Mm-hmm. And we've kind of bypassed the vast majority of the time that it took for us to build out the gas station network across North America and around the world, because you don't have to ship electricity. In a lot of cases, the infrastructure is there. It really is just a matter of taking that and putting it into a usable format for the vehicle. We don't have tanker trucks driving across the Midwest in order to get to small towns so that they can have access to petroleum. You've got wind and solar and all of these other things that are able to sort of power up these networks. We did actually have someone comment, Arnold Loretta said one of the hydrogen companies here in Vancouver is Ballard, which is down on Gateway Park Drive, right beside Best Buy headquarters, where it used to be, where the old one used to be.
One of the
where's that comment? Hang on. Did you say it was Arnell Loretta?
Mm-hmm.
That's my buddy from high school. Yay, hey, Arnell, wherever you are.
There you go.
Just to continue the point too about the gas stations. Kind of a coincidental thing is in Vancouver downtown, there's no more gas stations. The real estate value has gone up so much that they sold them all off. And so if you need gas down there, you're not going to find any, but there'll be lots of power for the electric cars. So Vancouver's slowly, almost indirectly turning into an electric only area. If you want to have a car down there, you just got to go across a bridge if you want to find a gas station.
So once we start to see additional offerings from the other car makers, and that's what it's going to take for some folks, because you see most of the EVs you see out there right now are Teslas, and they kind of all look the same. Even like the Model S and the Model 3 and the Model Y and even the Model X, even though it's a bit more bloated, they all kind of look the same. And there are some people who want a car that looks like the kind of cars that they're used to. That's where I think the Ford F-150 Lightning, which we've talked about previously on this show, is going to be a game changer for a lot of folks. Again, especially if they can plug in to the Tesla's supercharger network, and just being able to tap into that is a huge boon. But people are going to want cars that look like Beamers. Hopefully, classic Beamers. Like some BMW has been, I don't know what they're doing. We've talked about this before too. Like their kidney grills are getting ridiculously huge, and not that great looking. But so whether it's Will and a Beamer, and some people who prefer Toyotas when they finally get caught up, or Mercedes-Benz and so on, the big question with all of them is, will you be able to activate boat mode in these cars as well? Like apparently you can in a Tesla Model 3 built in China. We're not sure if this applies to Tesla Model 3s built other places, because I think in China they were thinking that there are certain regions that tend to flood a bit more. So apparently Tesla Model 3's boat mode, unofficial name, videos are frightening and amazing at the same time. So a number of users on social media, including Twitter and TikTok, have been sharing all sorts of like crazy clips over the last few days with the recent flooding there. And unlike internal combustion engine cars, which if you go a little too deep, they start, you have all these air intakes and other things where your water can get sucked into your engine and bad things will happen. So given that, these Teslas are sealed up a little better. I mean, it didn't say anything about any water ingress into the cabin. There may be a little bit of that, but the main thing is that the car keep going. And I believe some of the reading I was doing online said it was about 30 inches deep. They could go in the water before it started causing problems. Will, are you excited about a quasi-amphibious EV in your future?
Oh man, I actually worked in an area down in Burnaby, near where the old chalk office was, and this would come in handy because that would get flooded all the time. It was so bad. This is not exactly a car story, but so bad that there was a parking lot that was flooded down by the Yellow Pages office, and there was actually an otter doing backstrokes around cars. Those otters are just horrible and hilarious at the same time. Between that and that otter that got into the Chinese gardens downtown and was picking up koi fish, I just see them as lovable scamps. But yeah, no, this would be a pretty cool feature on a car. I mean, I remember my mom's car driving it out to EBC like 20 years ago, and it getting flooded and the water coming up through the floorboards and hearing weird sounds as something was going on with the engine. I'm just like, just gotta get to university. But I think it'd be cool.
Something I was wondering though is it might do well in freshwater, but saltwater is awfully corrosive. So in a place like Vancouver, if you're dealing with ocean water, that might be a bit of an issue. But I don't know the construction or the materials, the metallurgy that they use in a Tesla vehicle. But saltwater does a lot of damage. So you gotta make sure you get to the car wash and get the undercarriage wash at the same time, and make sure you're sorted out. Because as we know here, with the salt that we have on the roads in the wintertime, sometimes that'll really do a number on people's vehicles. So yeah, it could be a bit of an issue.
This is the problem with Tesla not having dealerships, because you don't have anyone to sell you that undercarriage spray.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, the other thing is, anytime I hear metallurgy, I just feel that that's a trait of a fourth level wizard or something like that. It's just like, roll for metallurgy.
No, so here's the thing. Like we've got airbag technology already. Right. So could you have something where the vehicle could deploy external airbags and possibly keep the vehicle afloat? I'm going too far with this. Never mind.
Yeah,
awesome.
I think it's a solution in search of a problem here.
Yeah. Unfortunately, once the airbag's deployed, the cost to repack them exceeds the value of the car, and then your car's a write-off.
But you don't die, and that's really a high priority for me. Exactly.
So. I remember, I think I was about 10 years old, and I was with my mom and my step Lake in the interior, and we had an AMC Eagle 4x4, and it was just raised up enough so that we could get through this really, really deep puddle that there were some others struggling with, even though it didn't have a raised air intake. Like you see some of those Toyota Land Cruisers and whatnot have the pipe up above the hood for air intake there for exactly those sorts of situations. And I remember being like a 10-year-old thinking, this is a little harrowing. Like, are we going to make it yet? If water hit the distributor cap and then all of a sudden the spark plugs couldn't work, and then you're literally dead in the water. So no one likes that. Yeah, literally dead. I know I said it. So and just to clarify, the Tesla China's Model 3s are built with water weighting capabilities in mind, and the Gigafactory in Shanghai, they have a simulator for flooded roads, which is used both on the Model 3 and the Model Y. So don't necessarily try this with your Tesla that is not built for the China market, because you're going to have a bad time unless it becomes popular enough to you can drive it around in the surf in Portland again, if it's got the saltwater capabilities. But sage advice from the oldest man in the room here, Jamie Reynolds, on if you're ever exposed to salt in your vehicle, get that wash done. It's your undercarriage spray there. It's always good to keep your undercarriage fresh. I mean, your car end personally. Speaking of level 4 wizards, Mark Zuckerberg expanded his thoughts on the metaverse. Now, a number of years ago at one of the F8 developer conferences, he performed a terribly awkward demo showing how you could get together with your friends cloaked in these very strange, 3D rendered avatars. You meet in cyberspace and talk with your friends, as opposed to using your real face. I guess that was appealing. And for some people, maybe it is. You could dress up as your favorite anime fox if you choose. I'm not naming names here, but he is been thinking a lot about this metaverse. And there's inspiration from science fiction from the last couple of decades here. But what he's talking about, he's got company divisions focused on products for communities, creators, commerce, and virtual reality. He thinks they would increasingly work together to realize this vision of not just having a social platform, but a platform where you do everything online in this virtual world. Now, Jamie, I know that you've read Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson, and others here may have as well.
Stephenson, yes.
Stephenson. Oh, geez. Sorry. Oh,
wow.
Then use a V. Gosh damn it. What are your thoughts on this? Is Zuck the one to make this finally come true? Because I mean, you spent some time in a metaverse of sorts a number of years ago as well.
Yeah, well, and that metaverse still exists. It made a joke of on The Office famously, a little software platform called Second Life, and it still exists, and it still makes millions of dollars in revenue. It's actually a thriving economy. So,
how is that revenue generated?
It's generated through taxation, basically. There was a couple different ways.
With representation, I hope.
Yeah, no representation at all. There's accounts. You can buy an account which gives you more access than a free account. And then the way they used to do it was if you were to say you wanted to upload an image or upload a three-dimensional object for your ability to sell online, if you uploaded, there was a charge to upload, and there would be a tax in essence to sell something. The company Linden Labs would take a cut and do that kind of thing too. And so the company itself makes tons of money, and it's a huge economy still. And there's people actually apparently over the terms of the pandemic here, people have flocked to it just to gain social interaction. It's changed a lot over the years. Now there's voice involved. The things are much more realistic than they ever used to be. And but what's been interesting too is that other platforms like Facebook, or there's been a couple of other virtual worlds that have come into play over the last few years. One was called Sansar, and another one called High Fidelity. I believe High Fidelity was actually created by the creator of Second Life, who moved away from the original company. Anyways, both of those have in essence failed because they were trying to start fresh again. And one of the reasons Second Life has continued is because it's so robust. It's got a nuanced economy. It's got nuanced connections. But I think one of the downsides that Facebook would be dealing with here is one of the things with Second Life too. It was kind of an alternate life where you actually could just be whoever you wanted to be. With this is all about being yourself. So I don't know if it would have the same draw for many people, although again, with the pandemic economy, everything's moved online. As an aside, Disney is closing most of their stores in Canada now, the Disney store, because of consumer demand has moved so much online. So if online purchases are becoming more and more popular, online connections should be becoming more and more popular, and there may be a benefit to it, but I don't know. I don't really know what they're planning on doing. It seems very highfalutin. And if they can do something like Snow Crash, great, but that's already been done in Second Life, and it's still there if anybody wants to explore it.
Now, you made some Linden dollars yourself when you were in Second Life as well. Now, do they tax those transactions when you're buying and selling virtual goods?
They did, but what they really only taxed it again when you imported something. But really, they would tax things. They would tax when you converted the money into real U.S. dollars, which you can do. You take the money that you make from your sales of virtual goods and then transfer it into. And it was really a market economy. It was actually an exchange. You go to the Linden exchange and exchange your Linden dollars for U.S. dollars, and so there would be an exchange fee on that, just like there would be from Canadian dollars to U.S. dollars.
And Linden dollars weren't even on the blockchain. Part of what's not being said here is like Facebook had tried to launch Libra, their own stable coin. That's now since being rebranded as Diem. Maybe they see this as a universal way to be able to conduct commerce in the metaverse. Zuckerberg actually referenced an essay by venture capitalist Matthew Ball, who talked about the importance of interoperability, and Zuckerberg, said that he's committed to this idea of having many different players involved in building this metaverse, and being able to, no one company controlling this. Now, great. Do you trust Mark Zuckerberg when he says these things? Because we're talking about the embodied internet here. This is us actually stepping into this metaverse to conduct all the sorts of things that we do right now through a browser window on our phones or desktop or laptop machines. How does that make you feel, stepping into this metaverse? Yeah,
not as far as I can throw him. And to be quite frank, like all of the things that Zuckerberg is purporting that we need to build, the framework is already there, right? We don't need him to bring this about. We've got all of the technologies that are going to bring about the metaverse already. Both Google and Apple have the AR kit technology that is going to be used to make this thing a reality. Mark's just another tailcoat rider on this. And when we take a look at the things that he's talking about, it's clear that he isn't even able to see the power of the technology that he has in his hands right now with Oculus. The stupidest thing that they did was mandate a Facebook account required to use this piece of hardware, because it took everybody out there that looked at Oculus. I own an Oculus first gen, and that company is dead to me now, because the moment that you tell me you're here about interoperability, but you're going to control the hardware that I use, that I bought from you, that was open and then wasn't, I'm going to pass on that. And when we're looking at interoperability technologies, when you take a look at things like ARKit, when you take a look at Google's answer to that, the way that you're going to be coding these things is going to be very similar across these boards. The thing that gets me here, and this is the one where it's just Mark doesn't quite know where they're going to be, and I think they've already seeded the fact that both Google and Apple are way ahead in the hardware game on this one. We tend to celebrate things that are really big, right? This is talking about phones and all the technology that's in them. But I think miniaturizing things and getting a supercomputer to fit into a pair of glasses is actually one of the bigger challenges. Yeah, they are. And you're already behind the 8 ball on this one, man, because it's actually not going to be that much in the way of hardware. The hardware is going to progress on its own. It's the software that's going to get you there. And Mark is way too far behind on this. So, is the metaverse going to be something that we're after? I'll give you a bit of a pop culture analogy here. We've all read and probably watched Ready Player One. He thinks that he's Atrak, right? He thinks that he is the grand wizard that is creating this world wherein all of these mystical things are going to be held. He's not. He's IOI. And I think we can all acknowledge that. This is the company that is digging deep into our privacy, that is looking to, like they did with India, provide free access to the internet that they controlled the flow of. This is a game that everyone has played with Facebook already, and Facebook is losing people in droves because of it. And if you're watching this on Facebook right now, thank you very much. Maybe take a look at us over on YouTube or on Twitter. But
now thanks for coming.
Yeah.
But this is one of those things where I don't see him as a visionary. I see him as somebody who is looking at visionaries and going, I really need to sound like them right now.
Now, Will, am I correct in assuming that you would be game for this if they allowed you to interact with your cats?
Yeah.
Some guest appearance there. But
guest appearance by Coco.
But seriously, you have some nieces and nephews, and I assume some of them play Minecraft and or Roblox. Do you think that there is a competing metaverse emerging for the younger generation who are spending so much time in these games already? How do you think that compares to what Facebook is trying to espouse here?
I think all this conversation is super interesting, and I've been thinking a lot about some of the stuff recently of that Into the Storm thing I was watching, telling you guys about a couple weeks ago, or was it last week? But also, through my experience with soccer supporters groups, I find that there's a really big need for a community. And a lot of what people come to soccer supporters groups for is they love soccer, but they also just want some sort of social interaction. And a lot of that is going more and more online. So whether it's Second Life or something else, these are the power of these communities, is that you get really into it and you get interconnected to other people. Now, having said that, I totally agree with Gray. I think that Facebook is fifth or sixth banana on the boat. I don't think this is going to happen for them. I think Mark Zuckerberg is grasping at straws. He's seeing things fall apart. He still obviously has a huge platform and it's worth something, but it's far diminished from what it used to be. I mean, Yahoo still hangs around. Who thinks of them as the driver in the industry of whatever they do? So, they basically have gone bankrupt. But But I think digital communities are a huge thing. I think they're going to expand. I mean, I think Ready Player One tapped into that, and whether it's one unified community with sub communities, or whether it's, you know, these boards or these games. I mean, you could even say things like World of Warcraft or Fortnite. These are communities, and Jamie bringing up, you know, currencies in Second Life. I mean, there was a genuine concern at one point with World of Warcraft that there was actually an economy, and people were looking into it about that there actually people are making real world money by selling things in this digital economy. It's now becoming its own currency. You know, we have to be careful about that. And, you know, the U.S. government was looking into it and all this kind of stuff. So, yes, I think this is going to be a big thing going forward. The super interesting thing to me is whether it's going to be one community, a series of communities, or one big community with sub-communities.
And will the big platforms play together? Because one thing Facebook has to its advantage is they're pushing 2.7 billion monthly active users at this point. So as much as you know, some of us may, you know, poo-poo it, we're using it here. That's where a lot of people are. So that is their advantage, even if they may have a tech deficit. If Zuckerberg is sincere about this interoperability factor, then they don't have to build it all. You know, Apple does their part, Google does their part. Now the question is, will all of these big platforms be as committed as sounds good to say to doing so? Or is this going to be a race to have, you know, the Google Metaverse, the Apple Metaverse, the Microsoft Metaverse, the Palm OS Metaverse?
Well, so I get where you're coming from. So I was just doing some quick searching. Second Life, actually, Linden Labs apparently has come up with their own payment finance system. So they have something called Tilia Pay now, TILIA Pay, and it enables publishers of video games and virtual worlds to create in-world economies and monetize user interaction. Built from the ground up to be robust, flexible, and secure, blah, 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 powers virtual economies. So they are trying to do that from the experience they've had in their virtual world to create a payment system that exists for other virtual worlds to exist. And then one other thing that's interesting, looking as well as the user base of Second Life, apparently it's a good majority women who use Second Life now because there's so much shopping in Second Life. You could take your avatar and you can, you know, change it into whatever you want it to be, and the technology's gotten so much better. Looking at some of those pictures you see on the screen right now of what's available, they look much more realistic than they used to ever be, and and so that's apparently a huge thing. Women like to go in there and dress up their Barbie dolls.
And then can people who want to do some high fidelity griefing go in there and spoil the fun for them?
I don't know. I'm sure that's still probably a thing. I remember back in the day there was some inappropriate griefing going on back then.
It's raining genitals. That's all.
What is griefing? I'm sorry. Did I just open up a can of worms? I don't know.
Oh, yeah, that's an entire other episode.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's basically
Offline?
you could. Yeah, there was. Let's just say you could in a group of people, you could from your avatar send out a whole bunch of images visible to everybody all over the screen. I remember there was a phallic type thing being sent over a big public meeting, and it was just inappropriate at the time. So I think those things have been resolved probably, but I haven't really seen anything.
They only happen in real public meetings.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, what's that, Greg?
They only happen in real public meetings now.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It's tubing time. So moving right along, just a couple of quickies here. Some interesting news. Nike's sustainable gear heads to the Tokyo Olympics. The apparel and shoes for Team USA were designed for peak performance, ecologically and athletically. So, you know, again, we're in the midst of the Tokyo 2020 games at the moment, even though it's 2021, they got pushed off by a year. And, you know, you think about it, there's a lot of apparel gets used in sports in general, but, you know, in all sort of competitions, including the Olympics. And footwear will only last, you know, so long. You want to be using fresh footwear on a regular basis for your competitions, you know, once you get it, you know, broken in, but they only last so long. So I think Nike is sort of addressing this challenge head on and saying, you know what, we're going to make sustainable footwear here. Staying ahead of the curve with performance technology. You have to think about what will athletes need for the next massive quadrennial global competition. So they're getting this out for Team USA for these Olympics, but in 3 years from now, if things get back to a regular schedule, maybe Nike's hope that more of the country teams will be following this route. Gray, do you think this is just greenwashing, or is this going to be a real trend?
I think it's a real trend. I mean, Nike's done some incredible work with a lot of their design over the last little while. A lot of it has been focused on athlete performance, seeing them turn to using materials that are ecologically sustainable. There's not a downside to it. I mean, it's, quite frankly, like, there's some really interesting designs. This is their space hippie sneaker. And if I had to describe myself to a lot of people, it probably would be as a space hippie. So that's on brand for me. Looking at that, right now, the biggest problem I think for a lot of athletes. Oh, look at that! That's solid right there. That's Back to the Future, part 2 in a nutshell.
Pockets inside out, though.
Yeah, but I mean, the biggest problem I think for a lot of folks has just been that it's giving athletes an undue advantage. I think we spoke about it a couple of weeks ago with even athletes that aren't sponsored by Nike using their materials, and it becomes a point there where equipment from one manufacturer becomes standard issue. That's questionable. That's more worrisome to me than the ecological aspect of this. So I say to them, guys, way to go. Like, if you're finding a way to do this, this is the point usually in the discussion where somebody chimes in about child labor. And that's really a discussion for another time, because we've got like 12 minutes left. So
a little child labor never hurt anyone, right?
One crisis
Laissez-faire
at
capitalism,
a time.
man.
Well, one crisis at a time.
It's laissez unfair capitalism, but
Now, Jamie, I know that we've had discussions in the past about how much of plastic that we're putting in our blue bins is actually getting recycled, because as we know,
it's a joke. Don't bother recycling.
Because there's a lot of it. When it does get recycled, it's downcycled. You're competing with cheap virgin plastic, and to properly sort and recycle already used plastic, it sometimes makes it uneconomical for vendors. So how does this make you feel? This idea that they are managing to upcycle with a product like this? Do you think this could spread to?
This is a business decision. This is playing into people's need to their hand wringing. They want to save the environment, so I'm going to buy shoes that won't hurt the environment. You know what? There's so much energy, I'm sure, that goes into these shoes, and so still a lot of product, and it's not going to actually get recycled. It's interesting in the business I'm in, the kitchen design, and we do countertops, of course, quite a bit for people. And one of the big features that the countertop companies now start saying is, "Oh, it's made from recycled product," and like, "Oh, okay, well, that's interesting." And then what happens when you're done with somebody wants to recycle it in the future? Like, "Oh no, you can't recycle it. It's made with recycled product." And well, okay, it's all just sales pitches to me, and I don't think what is the actual benefit? I don't think there is one, other than look at what a good job we're doing to save the environment. Buy my shoes.
And there's the symbolic aspect of this. If this perhaps could be a signal to others, like, hey, if we, Nike as a large, global corporation that holds some sway in the public eye, and maybe is doing a little PR work at the time too. Maybe they could be taking a leadership position, because we know there's so much waste in the clothing industry. So athletic wear is part of the clothing industry. If you look at fast fashion, it is a scourge on our planet. Like, so much stuff just ends up in landfills. Not even going to thrift stores and whatnot, because they don't want to devalue their brands. A lot of it just ends up in landfill, and it's not easy to recycle that kind of stuff. So if they're able to upcycle some products, because plastic ends up being downcycled. It's just like, you can't make plastic bottles out of plastic bottles. You end up making, maybe you can make roads, right? Inject it into asphalt and whatnot. That tends to be like the last option, aside from just injecting it into turtles' noses. Now, Will, you are, I would say you are streetwear adjacent. Your fashion sense over the years.
Sure.
How do you feel about the design of some of these things we're looking at? Not just the footwear itself, but some of the other clothing that they've included in some of the photos here. Would this encourage you to to buy some green fashion for what we're seeing from Nike here?
I don't mind some of this, as Gray said, and even some of that crazy stuff. I love the sort of bold pattern shirts, being a design guy as well. I think the pants would have to go a bit longer for me to be interested. I just can't do that. That's not me. But
what if you're in a flood zone in China and you're in your Model 3? You need the flood pants.
Maybe. I mean, I love also, to the point I think people have been saying where Nike is going with this and the thought about it. The other thing I'll say is I completely agree with Jamie, and I think we've had some conversations about this, that the misconception about recycling, and I think I've even heard it sometimes called wish cycling. People just put stuff into green bins or blue bins because they want it recycled so bad, and just, well, I don't know, but hopefully it happens.
And that's actually can be dangerous, because if you are a little too wishful, you can end up contaminating stuff there. And I've seen people do that before. It's like, oh well, it might be recyclable, and they throw it in there. And the problem is that if they get too much stuff that isn't actually recyclable, you can waste entire batches of product. So we need to be careful with our wish cycling.
Well,
Please, go on.
The only silver lining I'll give to that, and I is that at least people want to recycle. The technology isn't there. We haven't figured it out. We end up downcycling, and people don't realize the reality, which is a big problem. But I think partly reason some companies are trying this, or trying this angle, or trying to sell it, as Jamie said, rightly so, is that there's a market for it, right? So we just have to get better and do more products, and maybe get more efficient at it. I think maybe that's the silver lining. Absolutely, we're not there yet. This is a bit of a drop in the bucket, but at least it shows that maybe people want to recycle, and that if we can figure it out, it'll actually end up being for the greater good.
Well, perhaps we can recycle all our old internal combustion vehicles and make basketball playing robots. What do you think about that? The future of sports is a robot sinking basketballs at the Tokyo Olympics. It's a little bit cool and a little bit creepy. Gray, is this the beginning of the end? Is this a hint of Skynet? If these robots can start sinking baskets better than our elite Olympians?
It would worry me if they didn't at this point, right? Like, we've got all the technology to make, a device that will huck a ball into a net a given distance away. If it could not do this, I would be seriously worried. We've seen all this with Boston Dynamics in the last little while. And so, is this the future of sports? No, it's not. You're not going to see Nolan Ryan come back with a cyber arm. It's not happening. Don't worry about it. But this does actually, you're right, from the Cyberdyne Skynet aspect. Why would you put human lives in danger in fighting a war when if you have the technology, you put this on the ground in front of somebody? This is not the Olympics. I don't think was necessarily the place I'd want to show this. This doesn't feel right to me. This feels like it's a little on the tone deaf side. Also, when we're trying to celebrate the pinnacle of human achievement, hopefully without using performance enhancing drugs, do we really want to be showing that the machines are that much better than us? Like, can we not just have 1 minute here where we turn off our phones and maybe our dunking robots and just watch people do a thing? This one didn't land for me. You know what? They should have this guy go walk the dog from Boston Dynamics, and we're good.
Speaking of saving lives, Jamie, would you be down for American or Canadian football played by robots? Because more and more is coming out about concussions, long-term brain injuries, and effects from that due to NFL and CFL football. Could there be a robot football league in our future?
Well, there could be. I just don't think people would watch it. Part of the sports and the reason we watch sports is to embody some of our own hopes and dreams, and to see people competing and winning as human beings. But now, having said that, I really enjoy those robot war shows where they make the little robot machines and they go smash each other up. That's kind of fun to watch. So I watch that, but I think it's probably sports dependent.
What if we had something where there was like a cyber link where it was a human mind controlling a robot body? Therefore, you could have your football, but nobody actually ended up with jelly brain at the end of life.
Yeah, there was a movie with what's his
Gerard
name?
Butler.
No, well maybe, but I was thinking another one with
Hugh
what's his
Jackman?
Wolverine? Hugh Jackman. What was that movie?
You're talking Rocket Talking
Real
Robots.
Steel.
Yeah, I was
Real Steel.
about that. Yeah.
So little known fact, that is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Real Steel?
It's a cinematic classic. It's totally cheesy and a pulp
yeah,
movie,
cinematic
but
classics
it's
a
my
bit of a stretch,
favorite-
Will, but okay.
It's my favorite pulp guilty
It's
pleasure.
fun. It's a fun movie, but again, that is a very much I don't think they really went to the cybernetic level, but there is something to be said about it. But it was still a very impersonal thing. People seem to really enjoy watching it. I would almost lean toward what would happen and would be something more like the movie AI, where they actually had the flesh fair, and old robots would get thrown into a flesh fair and just destroyed because people just wanted to see all the robots destroyed because they didn't like how they were taking over humanity. And so I just don't think it would actually be a successful thing. Somebody will try it maybe at some point, but it's a ways to go before we get from a static in place robot shooting a basketball after thinking about it for 10 seconds to then having, okay, now we're going to be having complex plays that we run every 30 seconds. And we got a ways before we're going to worry about that.
I, for one, welcome our robot athlete overlords. Wah, wah. All right, so starting in 2 days, pre-orders for Playdate. You won't believe how fun this dorky $179 game system is. Pre-orders start July 29th, which is this, is it Thursday or Friday? Yeah, Thursday. For this $179 for this Game Boy-like delight, which at Verge, Ars Technica and The Verge and others have been testing for a couple of weeks. I've been following this since I first heard about it a year and a half ago, I believe. It's been developed in conjunction with Panic, which is a longtime Mac and iOS software developer. And Gray, I know that you've expressed interest in this. Can you give us the rundown on Playdate? And what's the deal with this yellow thing with a crank?
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. This is a high contrast black and white screen. It's not backlit. This is a very tiny handheld. The crank does not charge it. I think a lot of people out there are thinking that, but it doesn't. And what it does do is it comes with an almost like a season subscription to apps. It comes with 24 games. Apparently, people are saying it's incredibly fun, and the fact that it's developed by Panic, these guys made my Transmit, my favorite FTP software. And so I saw this come out. They announced this year, and I was like, yes, absolutely. So I'm going to be purchasing one of these things. Let's take a quick look here. It also has a stereo dock that you can dock it onto, and it can act as a Bluetooth speaker for that. When it's in dock mode, it'll act like a clock, which is kind of cool. There it is in comparison to the regular sized Nintendo Switch. Naturally, banana for scale. Awesome little piece here. $180 US for something different, something interesting, something weird. And apparently battery life on it is just sickeningly good. So yeah, I'm stoked. I'm interested to see. That crank is actually an analog control for some of these games. And one of them, you're controlling a character's movement through time. It's going to be really interesting to see what folks do with this. It's a little like looking at the Wii when it first came out and going, okay, so you have a TV remote here for your controller. What are we doing here? They've got the traditional A and B buttons in the D-pad, but I think we're going to see some cool stuff come from this.
There's even an available $29 Playdate cover, which makes it look like a bit of an ice cream sandwich if the ice cream flavor is banana.
Can I just...
you have a look on your face that says color me skeptical, so go on.
Yeah, I'm just looking at this. So doesn't everybody own a phone now and be able to play games on their phones and have it in color and have a clock on it too and be able to recharge it and have pretty good battery life and not have to buy something else to play other games? I don't really understand why this is necessary. This definitely just seems...
I think that's the key word there. It's not necessary. I think for a lot of folks there, though, we're looking at the overdeveloped games that are coming out on a lot of platforms. And let's face it, does your phone battery life last all day for a lot of people out there? No, it doesn't. Do you want something where maybe you can disconnect and you don't worry about notifications coming in? You're not worried about online multiplayer, leaderboards. You just kind of want to play a game. This is what that's the itch this one scratches for me.
Yeah, I just I still play Sudoku on my phone and put it on Do Not Disturb, and I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good with
Do
that.
not what?
Sudoku.
Will, you had a Game Boy growing up, didn't you? What does this do for you?
I've had several different systems. I had PlayStation Portable. I had a DS, a 3DS, a Game Boy, various different things. Sega. What was the portable one?
Game Gear.
Yeah, I had one of those as well. I mean, it's interesting. I'm sort of halfway in between Gray and Jamie. I love the idea about a hardware causing new software and to think outside the box and not just AAA titles. So I love that idea. Maybe tapping a little bit to what Jamie's saying, it does look like this was made by a hipster. It does look like, well, everyone does color. What about black and white? And we're going to put a crank on it. We don't know why, but we're going to do that. And it might drive innovation. But so I'm halfway in between the two of you. I'm on the fence. How about that? I'm Switzerland in this regard. I can see both arguments, and I agree with both arguments.
It's the dark horse aspect, I think, a little bit. Right? We're so used to things from Apple and Google and Nintendo and Sony and Microsoft. And these guys who make FTP software come out and they're like, all right, so here we go.
And hardware is hard. I want this to succeed because competition is good. And if this inspires some of the big players, like there's far few players in the gaming hardware space nowadays than there were, especially in the portable space, you know, with Sony basically letting the PS Vita die on the vine, which I complain about every other week here. So, you know, we've got the Nintendo Switch. It needs a competitor. What does Microsoft have a mobile gaming device? I mean, so much has gone towards phones and tablets, and it's so hard to get hardware projects off the ground. So they did Kickstarter for this, I believe. Like, I just want this to succeed, so we have more interesting creative initiatives like this in the future.
I should actually hit on that for just one note, which is one of the reasons why I'm excited about this is the hardware partner that they've chosen for this, which is Teenage Engineering. And these are folks that make really great audio devices. And so I've got a couple in here, samplers and things like that. And like the stuff that they've made, it's cool, it's weird, and it fits very much in the vein of this thing. So I looked at that, should have brought that up earlier, but it's also, from a hardware perspective, it's neat. And you've got two companies that I didn't think would ever working together on something that I didn't think would ever exist. I love being wrong about this one.
So I also have some Teenage Engineering pocket operators, and a couple of them, and they're super fun. Now the crank totally makes sense because that's what they do. They have the crank on like a lot of their, so they just shove the crank. They're like, we already have this for our sampler. Let's just put it on the video game hardware. We don't know why.
Jamie is just shaking his head at this point, and with good reason.
This is getting a little too esoteric for me. So you guys enjoy your little non-Game Boy thing.
Oh, okay, Jamie. Well, speaking of a Game Boy, could I interest you in a nuclear-powered Game Boy using a small quantity of tritium, a radioactive isotope of hydrogen, and a pair of solar panels? This one guy built a nuclear-powered portable game system that is capable of playing Tetris. The tritium puts out an incredibly small amount of energy, so the system uses tiny but incredibly efficient batteries that were able to power the game for an hour after charging for 2 months. So when one of y'all go to space, like on a Mars mission, whether it's with Elon or Jeff or maybe Richard, nuclear power could be a part of that, and you might as well power our portable gaming systems? Question mark?
You know what? I think. Well, it gets into a bigger discussion about nuclear power in general, but I think nuclear power is actually a savior when it comes to the energy crisis in the world. But this is more just proof of concept than anything else. I watched a bit of the video. It was a little dumb.
Well, we stand here, so.
But it was, it's basically power comes from lots of different places, and I think it's important to, you can get it from potatoes. I'm sure we all did those experiments in elementary school or high school. You can get power from lots of different places. You can, and I don't know, I just made the jump from watching some of the video that he got his nuclear material from. Smoke detectors, because in all smoke detectors there's little bits of radioactive material in there, and so you get your power from there and charge it up. Again, it's not a practical sort of way of doing things, but for a Game Boy. But hey, nuclear power to save the world, I'm all for it.
Nice. Saving the world one portable game console
There
at a
you go.
time. Quick hit here. Will brought this to our attention. A new device called an Atrak from Serato, pushing the boundaries of turntablist performance. Sonic Innovation Aid in a battle-tested frame. Will, what's the the 10-second version of this? Because this is a pretty specialty item, but
Yeah.
why does it speak to you?
I could spend 2 hours talking about this. So, as you know, I think most of you know that I'm pretty big into mixers and DJ, and particularly scratching. Atrak is a legend in the industry. He's Canadian. He won the World DMC Championship in 1997 at the ripe old age of 16. He's pretty much a legend. Started Fool's Gold record label, come out with some big artists, and he's kind of a game changer in terms of EDM. And he toured with Kanye West for a number of years. So he's kind of this guy that's got this epic name behind him. They already had this Rane 70. He came in and he changed it and added some signature features. The two big ones is it's got a bit of a different sound profile for more of his type of sound, tweak the lows and the mid end a little bit. But the other big thing from a turntablist point of view, and I have to say, like, this has been blowing up in some of the communities that I follow and I'm part of.
It's huge in the metaverse.
Huge in the metaverse. I always think that's like a comic book universe whenever I hear metaverse. But anyway, so, but one of the cool things, and I know this is super nerdy, but you can assign effects to the input faders. You can actually assign synthesizers or synth sounds to the up faders, and that just adds all sorts of creativity, and people are really excited about this. So this is a great little mixer for people who are into it. It's not for everyone. It's really for the scratch community. But I'm a huge fan, and I may actually have to drop down the cash for this one.
I don't see a price on the website. Do you know off the top of your head what this is going for?
$1,700 US. But this is the top end. Like these mixers generally cost between $1,000 and $3,000. These top end scratch mixers, because they are really instruments, not in a traditional sense. It's not a tuba or a guitar, but I mean, at this point, you can assign synthesizers to the up faders and create different notes and pitches. You're basically creating instrumentation. It is an instrument. So that's where we start getting into. It's sold at Tom Lee. It's sold at Lon McQuaid, avshop.com, these type of places, because it basically is a musical instrument.
So Will's birthday is this fall. We can start the the GoFundMe now.
GoFundMe, yeah.
All right, moving on. The stunning new Dune trailer is begging you to see it in theaters. It's begging me to see it in theaters, that's for sure. I believe they'll be releasing it online simultaneously, although Denis Villeneuve is not okay with that. Gray, how excited are you about this?
Oh, the Villeneuve of that guy trying to get me back in the theater. He will. This is it. This is the one that will absolutely do it. I'm so excited. Like, it's, I own multiple copies of the mid 80s original. I've got the sci-fi series on DVD. I've got all the books. So yeah, I'm just, with what we saw come out of him with Blade Runner 2049 and with was the Arrival. I'm just, he's got all my trust. I really can't say much more about it. This looks like it hits. So yeah, I'm there. You guys?
Jamie has concerns.
Oh,
I think I'm just getting old. I don't know, but I watched the trailer because the original 80s Dune I really enjoyed. But one of the things I was looking at this new trailer, and again, maybe I'm just stuck in the past, but everybody just looks so pretty. And it didn't have just the roughness and the toughness of what I was sort of expecting it to be. I remember it being it felt very, very dystopian, I suppose, just from our perspective. But to me, there was just a concern. Everybody just looked so Hollywood, and I'm like, it just doesn't have that grittiness that the original one really had, and really felt. It felt dark, it felt wet, it felt dirty, and it really added to the whole ambiance of it. And this one, just in the trailer, it just didn't grab me.
those terms also describe your favorite types of evening establishments to patronize as well, right?
Exactly, Tristan. Thank you for clarifying.
You know, it's interesting, I think, because I can see what you're talking about, but the vast majority of the scenes that we're seeing so far in the film or so far in the trailer are from, I would argue, probably the first 30 to 45 minutes of the film.
Sure, fair enough.
And so
Yeah,
I think we're going to see that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we'll see. I just want to make sure. Again, story for me, it's all about story. So as long as they stay true to the original story, and or as true as they can. Again, this is a virtually impossible story to put on film, but. And I think it was just the way that they filmed the original movie. It added something to it that I wasn't expecting, and I really kind of realized that I'm missing now in the trailer. But like you say, Gray, maybe that's in the second and third act we'll get nice and gritty.
Will, any thoughts on Dune, or were you a fan of the David Lynch version, or were you hoping that Jodorowsky's version would have made it to the screen? If you've ever seen that documentary, that would have been messed up.
I am definitely going to watch this. I'm certainly interested. I have to be honest. I'm not really a big fan. I don't hate it. I'm just never got into it. I think one of the things that sort of stopped me is hear me out on this. My brother is an enormous fan. And when I was 6 years old, when the original came out, totally doxing myself, if you can count and do math.
Math is hard.
Yeah. I watched this as a 16-year or the 1984 version. I watched this as a 6-year-old. Horrified me and traumatized me for life. So it was sort of like, I just never had any interest in Dune until about maybe 10 years ago. And I love sci-fi. I love active communities and people who are passionate about sci-fi, and this is very well produced sci-fi. So I'm interested. I'm going to watch it, but I can't say I'm a huge fan of the lore or the books. But I'm interested in seeing it and hopefully get over my trauma.
Now, something else we had some news on, but no actual trailer for yet. Zack Snyder trades zombies for heists in Netflix Army of Thieves trailer. Surprise, a prequel journey into the Army of the Dead universe. Did any of you here watch Army of the Dead on Netflix, which dropped a month or two ago with Dave Bautista in it? And some people may not be into it because there are zombies. But, it is a zombie heist movie, so a bit of a mashup there. Now we're going into a prequel, looking into the backgrounds of some of the heisters before the zombie apocalypse dropped. Anyone?
Yeah, I watched the. What was the first one called? Army of the Dead. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was dumb. You don't have to put too fine of a point on it. It was out of focus. I think it was actually really poorly shot. There was a lot of either unintentional or intentional red herrings, or a lot of unfired. What is it? Chekhov's guns. Yeah. The Chekhov's guns in there, and it's like, what about that thing? What about that thing? So I thought it was a little bit strange. I didn't come away with that from the movie thinking, oh, wow, boy, that was even enjoyable as an action movie. It was.
I need a prequel. It was think.
I think he just got given a bunch of money. Hey, make us 3 movies that are about zombies, and okay, I'm gonna start, and makes one, and then he's got to make 2 more. So, but this isn't zombies, I don't think. Well, no, I did see there's reference to it, anyways. Would not recommend it. Not super excited, although the safecracker in the first one was the most interesting character, I thought, and he's in this new one.
This is his story.
This is his story, yeah. So that was
this is his story, and so they're not just making zombie; they're making a of the Dead cinematic universe. This is one of them. There's an animated prequel that's apparently going to take place in Area 51 that will talk about whether these things were robots, whether they're zombies, whether they're aliens. I don't think any of them are Nazis, but it might get thrown in there at some point. Looking at this is kind of interesting because, like, in what world would you want to basically watch a prequel where a character was already dead in the thing that, oh God.
Yeah.
Well, nice playing.
Yeah, is it too late for Black Widow?
That's a Graham transition. Usually we get a Tristan transition.
Spoilers, man.
That's a Graham
Spoilers.
transition.
Marvel's latest film thoroughly skewers the franchise's portrayal of Black Widow. Far too late. So the premise of this article that we saw on the Verge last week was that, generally positive reception of the Black Widow movie, the twice delayed Black Widow movie, thanks COVID, but basically saying that, she was wasted in the first 22 movies. I mean, when she had opportunities, can't remember how many she actually starred in. And why is it only now, after her character is maybe no more in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that we get this story that actually maybe does her a little bit of justice? Gray, is this too little too late?
Here's the thing. This wasn't Natasha's Black Widow movie, right? This is Yelena's Black Widow movie. And we're being introduced to the Thunderbolts one by one, right? We've seen that in Winter Soldier. We're seeing that in Loki as well. You're going to see Lady Loki, probably part of the Thunderbolts at some point. I love the movie. It was great. I feel bad for Scarlett Johansson because the character really was just an also ran. Like Hawkeye's been an also ran. I was kind of hoping that there would be a little bit more meat here for her. That last little bit in the film, which we won't spoil what happens, but there's a chunk at the end of the film where you're like, okay, and then they just gloss. And that's tough. That's a tough moment because I think that would have been her moment really to give us the gap that happened between. That's the piece that I actually wanted to see, and we didn't quite get it. What I will say though is Florence Pugh, absolutely. Like, I don't know if you guys seen Midsummer. Between this and that,
very different movie.
She's got extra chops. Like Florence is the machine here. She's really really doing well.
I see what you did there.
Thank you. I would like to see more of a Red Guardian. Yes. I think I would love to see. I realize Chris Evans has probably moved the move on, and would he come back? No, I don't think I will. God, I would give money for a fight between those two, even if it was just a little bit of fisticuffs and some jokes. I'd pay good money for that.
Maybe we got the multiverse coming up, so maybe there'll be a timeline where that fight actually happens. Like Red Guardian actually brags about like what. Now, Jamie, you had mixed feelings on Black Widow. So the movie itself, and what do you feel about the movie itself and this take on it? That it might be, it's like, why now do we get this movie? Was it too late?
Yes, absolutely. It was too late. I think Scarlett Johansson does a great job as Black Widow. I really enjoy the character. It's still, I would argue that she's not really a superhero, but again, I realize that's a fight for another day.
Your criteria being
that she doesn't have superpowers.
She did fall off a 6-story building. Hit
yeah. Anyways, superheroes have superpowers.
She is.
Anyways, that's besides the point. But I really enjoyed all the acting in the show. Again, it was a fun movie. I like to go to a movie sometimes and just have fun. There was some imbalanced character development. I thought with Red Guardian, he was at one point very stoic, and then he became just a stupid goofball
the Homer Simpson
prison
syndrome.
But why prison would make you just a dumb goofball, I don't really understand. But anyways, but it was good. Again, I think my take on it is that it was done in response to maybe more women being in media now and saying, "Hey, we've got to make this thing happen. We got to get Black Widow. She's the woman who's important." They did it with Captain Marvel. So Black Widow comes onto the scene, and you could see in the movie itself there was definitely a Me Too tangent in the movie with Harvey Weinstein being one of the main evil villain guys. So it was a little on the nose for me. It was a little, okay, I see what you're doing here, but you're kind of taking away from the movie as a whole. Although, again, there's a bunch of things that went on in the movie that made it interesting. Again, Florence Pugh, I thought was great, but I think it was just maybe a movie about, okay, now it seems appropriate to make it, and we're just going to make it because now's the time to make it. And
it's too bad they could have taken more of a leadership role and made it 5 years ago, right?
Well, they should have. Again, I would have been so much more enjoyable at that point. Although we wouldn't have had Florence Pugh at that point, probably.
Yeah. Fair enough. Too great.
And she was great in that.
Now, Will, as the keeper of the momentous keeper of the Marvel canon, what are your thoughts on Black
Gray
Widow?
is right up there with me. I think he's a huge fan as well. I hear the argument. I think that how many movies do you want them to make? People already complain about how many movies are being made with Marvel. And to quote my wife, you can please none of the people none of the time. They eventually made a movie of her. Like, it took some time. She's not exactly what I would call one of the A-list characters. And this is one of the problems that Marvel has had historically, is that they have female characters, but they tend not to be the most important people in their comic universe. Now, they're trying to do a good job at elevating some characters that are, visible minorities or, women or other sort of minorities, and trying to make them more important characters in the MCU. And I applaud it, and I'm all for it. But it's not as natural because the comic books have not been as good. One of the criticisms historically is Stan Lee can't write women. Back in the day, is some of the best characters tended not to be women. The most popular characters or the key characters in the comic universe are like Invisible Woman, Spider-Woman, Storm. Okay, Spider-Woman doesn't make a lot of sense to bring in Jessica Drake, I think her name is, and we don't have Fantastic Four, and yes. Storm is yet, and we don't have Storm yet. So there's not a lot of great characters. There is Black Widow, there is obviously Captain Marvel. They've made movies of them. They're trying to elevate some of these characters. We're getting a Miss Marvel. We got a Scarlet Witch TV show. Like, it's coming. It's just that it's taken some time because it was a natural fit, like Hulk, like Thor, like Captain America, like Iron Man, like Spider-Man, like Wolverine. These are all major characters and all male. It just took time.
They had to pour the foundations for what we're about to see.
Yes, exactly. They're getting to it, is what I'm saying. And we got to it, and maybe it's a little late because she's already dead. But to Gray's point, they're transitioning, and they're also making her more important just looking backwards. So, yeah. And you only have so much screen time. This is one of the problem with the X-Men movie, like X-Men Last Stand, was they tried to introduce too many characters too quickly in the last movie. They made no sense. We cared nothing about them. And, why was the Beast there? No reason. So I think that they have sprinkled these characters in, and now they're backfilling and going in and making movies about them. I'll get off my soapbox. I'm done.
Well, as a longtime casual fan of the DC universe, I can't wait until they make a Green Lanternette movie.
Nice. With Blake Lively?
Sure, why not? Pokemon live action series in early development at Netflix from Lucifer's Joe Henderson. Now, Jamie is our official momentous Pokemon correspondent. How do you take this news?
Really? I don't care. I just don't care.
Did you see the live action movie with Ronald Reynolds?
I did not, because I don't care.
Detective Pikachu.
Yeah, don't ask me.
It was great. Now. I loved it.
Hang up on this call and go watch Detective Pikachu.
It's great.
It's actually surprisingly good.
Just does not ring true.
But shut off your brain before you watch it. Don't.
Oh, great! That's my favorite kind of movie. One that makes no sense at all.
Exactly.
Yeah. No. I that's all right. No. Ask Will about Pokemon. That's probably a better choice.
Jamie, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. You seem to know more about Pokemon than anyone.
No, my kids, they collected the cards. That's all they did, and they didn't get much past that. So
we're still waiting to see if they're millionaires yet. Come on.
I know they still haven't dug them out. I don't know why, but
so Will, you and I saw Detective Pikachu together. Yeah. I think we both enjoyed it. Gray, did you see Detective Pikachu?
I did. I actually really quite enjoyed it, and I thought Rane Reynolds did a great job. So, would I watch a live action series? Heck yeah, I would.
Yeah, majority rules. Sorry, Jamie.
Great. You guys win. Good job.
Exactly. But Jamie, you won recently because you acquired a new phone after months of intensive research.
Yes. Well, I'm just waiting for the pricing to come down and plans to be valid. But yes, I got myself a Samsung S21 Ultra phone here with no case yet, and I'm still deciding on that. But look at that! Look at that camera bump there! Look at that sucker, eh? That's a biggie. But yeah, so I just got this yesterday. I'm still trying it out, but it's got the little fingerprint sensor in the screen. Cool. So yeah, it
take note, Apple. Yeah,
yeah. Well, I think they just patented something. Apple did similar to that, or with their own version of it.
Yeah, everyone's trying to make that happen too. So what inspired you to upgrade from your previous phone, and what was your previous phone?
Well, so I had an S9 Plus, and
so another big
I'm not a Samsung fanboy or anything. I was actually thinking of maybe going on to the Google 6, a Pixel 6, but it's not out yet. And in the end, the battery was just getting a little weak on the other one, and it's been a few years since I updated. And it seems like a really nice upgrade so far. And it's got the really wide angle lenses and I got 100 times zoom digital for the end of it, I'm sure. But it just seems like a phone that'll last me for a lot of years. And that's about all I have to say about that.
Nice. So thumbs up on the Samsung Galaxy S21
yes, I'll give
Ultra
it
5G.
24 hour review. Yeah, it's a positive upgrade, that's for sure. But I'm missing the headphone jack. I had a headphone jack on my S9 Plus, and I don't like that it doesn't have a headphone jack. So I have Bluetooth headphones, but I like the quality of a plugged-in headphone.
Gotcha. And so this model came out in January, and it never fails with it. If you like Samsung's phones, just don't buy them when they're new, because wait a few months and they're basically half price.
Yeah. Well, no, this one is still pretty expensive. It was really highly reviewed and has been all the way along. Right. I think the S21, the S21 itself, the basic one, is not quite as good, and there's a possibility of a Note version coming out at some point, but it's not for a while, if at all. But yeah, the pricing reduced, and there was better plans out there for me. And I'm not an early adopter anymore. I used to be, but I want to see the reviews now and see what people say.
Yeah, and they want, and often they'll do things like the carriers will do 2-for-1 plans for if a couple wants to upgrade their phones and whatnot. So it's a good idea. If you're not an early adopter, you don't need to be on the bleeding edge. Sometimes it's worthwhile waiting a couple months to see if the phone that you're interested in might come down in price a little bit there. So we have lost Gray. So I don't know if we can even end the stream without him. So we just gotta go.
You guys and your Macs, they crash all the time.
We're stuck here.
Yes, it goes on and on, my friend.
All right. So I had a pick this week. The season 2 of Ted Lasso just premiered. Episode 1 dropped last week, and after much badgering, I think I got Will and Gray to finally watch it as well. I don't think, Jamie, you haven't done a free trial of Apple TV Plus yet because it doesn't rhyme with Schmoogle. Yes, there's that.
Yes.
So Will, being our official soccer correspondent, what did you think of the season premiere of Ted Lasso season 2?
Well, Ted Lasso is my jam. As you guys know, I'm a huge soccer / football, European football fan. And this is just great humor. One of the things that is sort of surprising to me, and I know we've talked about it, Tristan, I didn't know that people loved it so much. I love it deeply. I'm shocked how many people who have zero interest in soccer like this show. So it's good sense of humor. I think they're good characters. Highly recommend it. I hesitated to recommend it to people because of the subject matter and because there's a lot of soccer stuff in there. But I don't think, again, I'm biased because I love soccer, but I'm just shocked that people like it regardless of the soccer thing. Tristan, you're not exactly the biggest soccer fan. What do you feel about the soccer content in it?
Oh, it's not about soccer at all. It's just like how Walking Dead isn't really about zombies, right? It's a function. Soccer is like a character in the story, but it's about the people, and it's about seeing the best in people and helping people become the best of themselves. And it's about a protagonist who, unlike so many people online with their hot takes on Twitter and so on, is not cynical, who is someone who is ostensibly ignorant, but is also curious. And I think that is
Positive
something,
regardless.
yeah, exactly. That's something that we need. We need less of ignorance with lack of curiosity. If people are ignorant, that's okay. It's okay to admit that, but to be open to learning and not just like, oh, I know what I know, and that's it. It's got a kind heart to it. It was exactly what we needed last summer when season 1 came out in the midst of COVID. So I would not even hesitate to recommend to anyone, whether they were a soccer fan or not. And Gray, you're not a huge sports ball guy in general. What's your take on Ted Lasso so far?
I'm going to really enjoy.
All right. I'm not going to ask you too many more questions because your audio is frapping out. So we're going to.
It's a mocha frapping.
Mocha frapping. All right. So last up, of course, we need to give a shout out to the long lost Tasia Custody, who had another video this past week on the best Google Maps settings. So if you are a Google Maps user, there's all sorts of settings in there that you can tweak to optimize your experience. Some of these may apply to things like Apple Maps, which has improved immeasurably over the last 10 years, although it was a laughing stock when it was rushed out to market. That whole backstory we can get into some other time when we've got time. Maybe some of these settings would apply to MapQuest. Not so sure, but definitely check out Tasia's last videos at youtube.com/Tasia Custode. That's TASIACUSTODE. And we've been teasing people for weeks that she would be returning, and things keep happening, but say a little prayer, and hopefully Tasia will be joining us again next week, and then we don't have to see this guy anymore.
Is she like Candyman? You say her name 3 times and she appears.
Exactly. Hopefully. If you want to learn more about Momentous, you can check us out, momentous.tv, facebook.com/momentous.tv, twitter.com/momentous.tv, instagram.com/momentous.tv. On YouTube, search my name, that you can see the spelling here, and you'll find a playlist with all our Momentous videos, live and otherwise. Gray, Will, thank you so much, and a special thanks to the incomparable Jamie Reynolds for bringing the noise. We really appreciate your
Jamie,
input.
Complaining about all this stuff. Just complaining about all this stuff because I'm too old.
Jamie, you always bring the truth, and I
do bring the truth.
And enjoy it.
The hammer of truth comes down. Yes.
Yeah.
What is truth? All right. We'll see you all next
time
on Momentous Live.
We're still live.